Okay, so I'm back after a bit of a hiatus, and it turns out this movie making thing is really hard because first I ran out of space on my storage drive, and then my battery ran out of power, and I was looking at a playback of what I had already recorded, and it turns out that I have the most crinkly hands ever in history. But anyway, getting back to the Angry Bird, there are just a couple of things that we have to complete. So the first thing we're going to work on next are the eyebrows. So if you notice now, this is kind of dry and it's hard to knead. So I'm just going to get a little bit of vegetable shortening. I just got a little bit on my fingers, and that's good enough. Okay, once again we've kneaded it. Oops. And I'm just going to roll it out. Now you can use shortening or powdered sugar if your fondant sticks to the surface that you're working on. But I found that these mats, these are really just cutting mats. They work really well. The fondant doesn't stick as much to it. So I think this should be good, and we're going to get 2 eyebrows out of this. That's how thick it is. All right. So what you're going to do essentially is first just make a nice rectangle. And don't worry about the tattered edges, we'll just clean it up. But we need a rectangle, so there we go. Alright. And now we're going to cut this on a bias. So we're kind of splitting it in half, but we're cutting it in a bias so that there's less on this side and more here, and the reverse at the other end. I think there we go. So we have again 2 quadrilaterals. This looks a little too thick to me actually, so I'm going to make these a little thinner. I'm just going to go on the straight edge and take a little bit off. And again, since this is freehand, you've just got to eyeball it until it's right for the shape and size you're working with. And just go back and clean up the edges. Same thing with this guy. Let's get the straight edge and take a little bit off. And again, clean up the edges. I've got some there. Okay, so just make sure which way your eyebrows are going to be placed. The narrow end is going to be towards the inside of the face, and the wider is going to be outside. So that's kind of simulating a furrowed brow, but that's what you're going to do. Okay, so now we have the eyebrows, and all that we have left is the little tan kind of space just under the beak and in the belly area of the Angry Bird. So I used white fondant here, and I added a little bit of Wilton's peach gel, peach colored gel, a dab of brown actually, and a dab of golden yellow, not lime yellow but golden yellow, and that's how I got this color. But again, just play around with it and improvise until you have the color you want. This is not exactly tan, but it'll do. Alright, once again I'm just going to roll it out now, and this is going to be more or less a circle, so we just try to keep it more or less circular. I'm not very good with the circle making thing, as you can very well see. Okay, it kind of works out at the end. And you can always use a cookie cutter or any other cutter that you have to get a nice even circle. But I think this is good enough. Okay. Just again use the edge of your finger, whoops, or your nail to give it a nice clean edge, and that's good enough. So just tuck in the edges where they aren't perfect. And this is a little bit more of an oval than a round, but it's perfectly fine. And if you look, that's about the right size and shape. So we're now ready to start assembling our Angry Bird. And I did notice though that I had made my Angry Bird a little flat, kind of on the, it looks a little, it bulges on these sides, less so on this. But that helps kind of give it the perspective of a front and a back. So I prefer it this way. So as we start assembling the Angry Bird, the first thing we are going to do is I have a little bit of just water that I'm going to brush onto my fondant. You can also use vodka actually, which is not very good if you're a vodka drinker, because you'll be drinking more than you'll be getting on your fondant. And I see I have some remnants of some other color here, but that's no problem. This is going to be on the inside. Luckily for me, also I'm a rum and coke kind of girl, and 2TD wine, so I'm good. But instead of vodka today, I'm just using water. That works just as well. Okay, and you don't really taste the vodka; it evaporates, so it's safe to use on anything you're making for kids. So there is the belly area, and anything that's not very perfect, again, just go back and use something to smooth out. Whatever tool you have handy. I do have a little bit of a speck of a different color in here, but that's okay. We'll make that be the back. Okay, so that's the front. Now we're going to get the beak on next, and the beak kind of overlaps the belly, so that's why we got the belly on first. Same thing again. Now the beak has been sitting out for, I don't know, maybe like 20 odd minutes, and it's kind of hard, but I'm just going to again make sure it's a nice circle here, as close to a circle as possible. Get just a dab of water, not very much, and not so much that it'll spread onto the rest of the fondant. There we go. And so this is how the beak is placed here. And actually, you know what, let me just take the beak off. I'm first going to put the eyes on there, so that's okay. You see now that this is kind of dry, so that's good to go. And what I'm going to use to line the eye is a food writer. This again is something that Wilton makes, and it makes you get these at different, the tips are of different thickness. This is much thicker, this finer, so I'm going to use the fine for the edge. And so you're just basically drawing around the edge, and try to even color this, the depth or the height of it, I should say, I think. Now this will, you'll get it on your fingers, so be careful, because it'll color the rest of the fondant. And I've often had my Angry Birds have issues with their makeup. Just make it even, and again approximate is good enough. We'll leave that edge, we'll put it on the inside, so it doesn't have to be even all the way around. There you go, that's one. See, I got a little bit of black smudge there, but we'll cover it up, so that's okay. Yeah, that's one of the problems of working with the darker shade, but that's okay, it happens. You can also use a little bit of paint on your brush, on a fine brush, and just go around and paint the edge. And you would use either water, a little bit of water, or just vodka again to thin out your paint. And the color that you would use would be again the Wilton's gel colors. That looks good enough now. There. Okay, and now we have to make the pupils of the eye. Just a little bit here. Here we go. So we need the pupils of the eyes, and I'm going to use the wider tip, the thicker tip on this one. So now to give the angry kind of look, the first thing we have to do is to place the eyes right next to each other. The second thing you need to do is to kind of make him squinty, and you would do that by creating this little pupil towards the inner edge, so somewhere there, and then just kind of dot it on. Don't press too hard because it will indent the fondant. It's still not all the way dry. That's one. And if you want to have fun with this, you can always have the eyeballs kind of staggered. It just gives it a kind of dazed look. Anything goes with the Angry Birds. And I'm just going back in there with my finer tip rather, and there. Not a perfect circle, but it'll do. And I need to make this a little bigger. And again, the fondant is not really all the way dry, so you've got to be very careful not to push the tip of the pen into the fondant, or it moves when you're ready to move. See, it's bent a little bit out of shape, but not a problem. There, that's good. I did get a little bit of black on here, so you need to be careful when you're making these for something, you know, something formal, but for now this is fine. So now we're going to get the eyes on, and the eyes have to come on before the eyebrows. So a little bit of, very little bit of water, and then one eye goes on there. And I am kind of, you know, turning it around so I can cover the little mishap I have here when I put the nose over the eyes, when the nose overlaps the eyes. So now I have my eyes on. Going back to the beak, oh, sorry, it wasn't the nose but the beak. A little bit of water there again, and overlap. So now you see the little mishaps that we have are all covered. Oops. And finally we need to get the eyebrows on. Now remember, with the eyebrows they have to be thin ends touching each other, so make sure you're sticking the right side. So now what I'm going to do is to have it, oops, be careful, it'll leave a mark, so there we go. And now just flatten it out, and the other one again. Ah, this got out of shape. This angry bird is not very happy, is he? And here's the other one. And then just play around with it until you have it at the right angle so he looks angry enough. So now the eyes are touching each other. There we go. Okay, so now that we have the eyebrows on, all that's left to do is to add the little crest at the top of the head. And to do that we're going to use the knife again to just make a little bit of an insertion. And if you can see, the inside is still pretty, it's not all the way dry. Little bit of water inside, and then you put this in here, just push it down, and there, that's good to go. I do say that a lot, don't I? Good to go. And finally the tail. Again, make a little bit of a slit here, and we'll tuck the tail in there so it fits in nice and neat. Okay, so once again, this is where I inserted the crest, and I pushed it right in there, and the tail, and I pushed it right in there, so it's a nice clean edge because we cut that little slit there. And there you have it. That's your red fondant angry bird. You could put this on your cake with a little bit of buttercream at the bottom, or if you're putting it on a fondant surface, then just again a little bit of water, a little bit of vodka, and it'll stay right there. You can also insert a toothpick in this, but I prefer not to do that when children are going to be eating the cake. There you go. That's your angry bird. I hope you liked it.